Well, joining us to discuss in more detail is Eric Lisanne. He's a legal expert and lawyer, and he is live with us now from Washington. Great to have you with us, Eric. Now, first of all, what is your take on this? Is this anonymous op-ed writer an unsung hero, or, as Trump says, a gutless coward?
There's a strong case to be made for both of these things. I think if we want to ascribe the best of intentions to this person, we would say that he's somebody that's stuck in a dilemma between doing what he or she thinks is right for the country and between serving following the orders of the president, who in some ways this person is sworn to uphold. And it is very undemocratic for an unelected official to be actively working from inside the White House to be subverting the will of the executive. On the other hand, if it is really a situation, and there is a great deal of evidence to support the assertion that this is really a situation where the president is actively working against the interests of the United States and all of the other constitutional checks are not working, such as the Congress, because it's controlled by a party of Republican enablers, which is what this author is saying, then the author is doing the only thing possible by staying within to trying to help further the interests of the United States and implicitly the world, because the United States is in many ways the leader of the world. So it's a very tricky dilemma, but I think it's just a matter of time now before that person is quote-unquote outed, so to speak, so it won't really matter whether they're anonymous or not, and then at that point they'll be no longer in the administration. But this type of a whistleblower is in a difficult position. The only caveat I would have to that, though, is if this is really a high-ranking official, somebody that we all know that's of cabinet level, then probably they should have gone public, not in an anonymous way, but by speaking forthrightly and directly under their own name and trying to mount a real democratic opposition rather than working in this way.
Well, Trump says this is a national security issue, and he is demanding that the New York Times reveal who this is. Is there any legal way he could force the newspaper to do that? Can you ever see that happening?
It would require a showing that some laws have been broken, and that clearly if there was a release of classified information, but that does not appear to be the case here. This was a letter mostly involving platitudes and generalities, couched in some overarching rhetoric. So I think the president's position there is a difficult one. Even more extreme is the suggestion of Rand Paul, who up to now had been known as a quote-unquote libertarian and a privacy advocate, who's saying that everybody should be subjected to mandatory lie detector tests until somehow magically the author of this up to now anonymous letter is revealed. I think legally right now the president does not have a basis to go after this person, and indeed we all should be very wary of any efforts to do this, because it just strikes everybody as an act of political reprisal. But that in itself is terrifying. We go back to the president's meeting in Helsinki, where he thought Russian President Putin had a great idea in bringing over American officials to be interrogated in Russia for policy positions and statements they had made. So we're really in Wonderland with this right now.
Or Crazy Town, as someone else allegedly called it the other day. There's been a lot of talk following Bob Woodward's book, which came out yesterday, and this piece today about the 25th Amendment of the Constitution. Can you tell us a bit about that, and if that might be on the cards one day?
Well, that is something that has been discussed from the beginning of Trump's presidency, because really none of these things, whether the general tone of this letter or of Bob Woodward's book, does not contradict anything that we've heard. And we've heard that there are problems like this and problems with the core competence of the president to govern. The 25th Amendment is something that was enacted in the 60s, has never remotely come into play, but was designed for situations where there might be a serious medical disability compounding the president. But there's no strict inhibiting the president and thereby endangering the country's interest. But since there's no details on when it can be implemented, the circumstances as to what should trigger it are very much in question. But what it would require is a very, very high barrier. It would require the cabinet, a majority of the cabinet, plus the vice president, to declare the president unfit for office. And then on top of that, it would require the Congress, by a 2/3 majority, both houses, to declare that the president was unfit, unless the president, of course, voluntarily resigned. Right now, with the Republicans, that seems an almost impossible task.
Eric, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, but thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Eric Lisanne there in Washington.